What's up, guys? We got a special video today. I've spent the last week talking to a bunch of draft analysts about their favorite players in the 2026 class, and I'll be showing those conversations here. Now, I have to say, I got this idea from a video that Sam and Steve did on their podcast, Check the Mic, last April. I thought it was a great format for a video, and I don't think they're doing one before the season, so I figured I'd put this together to cap off summer scouting. Thank you to everyone who joined and was so generous with their time, and let's get right into it.
Hey, this is Connor Rogers, NFL draft analyst, NBC Sports, and co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Today I'm talking about Illinois cornerback Xavier Scott.
I'm pumped that you brought up Scott. He was actually the only non-quarterback who returned to school last year that I had a second round grade or better on. And one of my favorite corners in this class. So something that I do for summer scouting, especially when I've got like a long list of players that are all just names on a sheet, is I'll watch some sort of cut up of like their best plays to prioritize the order of how I want to watch them. For corners, I always just start off by watching everyone's interceptions and pass breakups. I don't know if I've seen a college corner with as impressive of a sizzle reel as Xavier Scott. Can you speak to Scott's ability as just a pure playmaker? And I mean, are there any other corners in this class whose 7 best plays stack up with his?
Yeah, so James, it's so funny you say it like that because during summer scouting, I break up my notes box in my spreadsheet for the player, just strengths, weaknesses, and a synopsis. A synopsis during summer scouting is more of a 1 or 2 liner to just help you kind of summarize the guy. When, pre-draft, it's going to be a pretty long summary. The first word from strengths is just playmaker. And why that is, from 2023 to 2024, 6 picks, 17 passes broken up. He's brought one of the picks back to the house. He's forced 2 fumbles. You get a little bit of the same energy, obviously, that Witherspoon once brought to this defense, right? There is continuity at the Illinois program on this defense of how these guys play, the energy. It's funny, too, a lot of their, top defenders are recruits out of the state of Florida. A lot of them have basketball backgrounds. They just kind of have this pipeline thing going right now. And the second thing is with him, and why he's able to, or something that helps maximize his talent, is they use him all over the place. I mean, you look at the snap count last year: 443 in the slot, 255 at outside corner, 46 as a box player, really as a box safety, and then 24 snaps as a true free safety. So this is somebody that they think can basically handle any role in the secondary. And why wouldn't you believe him with the way what he's posted on tape?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting that you brought up Witherspoon. I think we're kind of on the same wavelength because I saw flashes of Witherspoon on his tape as well. Like, they're not the same player. I feel like Witherspoon had the pain receptors in his brain surgically removed, and Scott is like, I think, has good physicality, but he isn't just a demon out there.
Different, yeah, right.
Yeah, and a lot of the helmet scouting comparisons are kind of lazy, but these college teams, they have their own prototypes for like how they recruit players. So it's going to make sense that you get similar archetypes, stylistically. I wanted to hit on position with Xavier Scott because I think he is somebody that has that versatility. What do you think about, I guess the first question would be, do you think there are any limitations that would prevent him from playing boundary in the NFL? And if he does move inside, how confident are you in him, fitting the run, playing blocks, that kind of thing?
Right. He's not the biggest guy in the world. I have him as 5'11", 198, which isn't small from a height and weight corner perspective. The arms are a hair below 31 inches. The hand size is 8 3/8. That's pretty small. But, he's not somebody that is, 5'9" and has to kick inside no matter what. But he's not the biggest, longest corner in the world. I think when I look at one thing I wrote down, if he's going to play on the outside, specifically in the red zone, it felt like he was just a little late to diagnose a couple things in the red zone that the opposition was trying to do to him. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's something that over time is more of a IQ and awareness situation that he just grows into. His stance could be a little upright at times. Once again, this is really nitpicking kind of stuff. My biggest question with him has nothing to do with how he plays and everything to do with health. I mean, this is someone that, the torn meniscus and the partially torn ACL in 2023, I believe that was the season finale. And then he had an ankle injury that bothered him at the end of last year, and it sounds like it carried over a little bit into the spring this year. But sometimes programs are being delicate with a high end talent like that.
Mhm.
So really, if he could stay healthy, I think he can give you versatility on the back end in a way that just not a lot of DBs are built to. And obviously, you love how his skill set transitions to the slot. Like this is somebody that I think besides that red zone situation, I think the pre and post snap awareness is pretty good. He understands how to read quarterbacks and jump underneath routes. He anticipates when the ball is coming out on those short and intermediate routes, and that's why he racks up. Passes defended could be kind of tricky, but there's guys and interceptions. There's not they're not all built the same as much as
Yeah.
they show the same in the stat sheet. You could watch like I remember this with Emmanuel Forbes, and I know it's kind of punching down low on Emmanuel Forbes, so I hate to
Yep.
just do this over and over again. But when I watched his interceptions, I was like, has anyone else watched? Like, there's a couple here where he read a screen and ran it back to the house. There's also a couple where, it's like, man, the ball got batted up and he ended up catching it a couple times. I think with Scott, a lot of his ball production is very real. It's
Yeah.
because of his senses, his kind of that sixth sense, his quick trigger is one of his favorite skill sets I have of his. And honestly, a guy that could defend a two-way go out of the slot, that is a big, big plus. And I think he's got that. So maybe you maximize him in the slot, but it's nice to know you could have him kick inside and outside, especially if there was a matchup that you wanted him to shadow.
That point is something that I've been trying to hammer home for so long, is that the majority of interceptions are like not that impressive. I would say on average, I think pass breakups are going to be more impressive, like from the DB standpoint than interceptions. Because when you watch a bunch of them, you've got so many like into the half Hail Marys or just like stuff that's thrown right to you. And like you said, Scott's are all high quality. I don't know if you went back to 2023 at all,
Yeah.
but he had this interception against Nebraska that really, I think, projects to his skill set playing safety, where he was like bailing out from, I think, pretty close to the line of scrimmage into cover two, and he was playing the deep half. And you see him like be able to swivel, open back up, got an interception on a go route down the sideline, I think. So, yeah, I think certain schemes are going to love his versatility.
All right. My player is Ole Miss defensive end. I don't know if I should even call him a defensive end, but Ole Miss's defender, Suntarine Perkins. I say I shouldn't call him a defensive end because he's 6'1", 210. And I wanted to talk about it because I've never seen a player like this. We've seen undersized edge guys, but they're usually like 230. They're like 225. And we're like, okay, yeah, they're going to play off-ball linebacker. They're going to do something else in the NFL. But this guy's 210, and he rushes the passer like better than any of those 225 guys that like usually get called, your tweeners, your guys that have to move off ball. And he's out here like bull rushing 330-pound tackles. He had double-digit sacks last year as a sophomore in the SEC at Ole Miss. I just watch his tape. It's just the physicality he plays with at that size, and I'm just in awe of what this guy can do. And so obviously, like, cannot play edge in the NFL, but just the way he plays football, I feel like I want the guy on my team regardless of where I'm playing him.
Yeah, so this is the one that you're gonna have to sell me on. I'm not gonna lie. It's hard for me to get over 210 pounds. But if we're saying we're not playing him at edge, then okay, then I'm a lot more open to it. So what role do you see for him most realistically in the league?
It's off-ball linebacker, right? Like a weak side linebacker, blitz heavy scheme more likely than not, because you want to take advantage of that. But I think just the traits of the guys who have done it in the past, the guys who have been successful in that sort of transition, it really comes down to physicality, fluidity, and space. It's like, can you, take on blocks consistently? You aren't just one of these, undersized edge guys who are just running around offense tackles, right? We've seen those. Those tend not to work out in the NFL. Who are just the pure speed guys. Are you actually defeating blocks in the way it takes to defeat blocks at the NFL level? And then can you move in space? And he drops into coverage a good amount, right? He 113 snaps last year in coverage, made some plays on the football, makes plays on ball carrier space.
Led
So,
SEC edge defenders with 12 coverage tackles last year.
yes. So like you've seen it, and it looks good when he's out in space tracking down ball carriers. And he really is like a high-end athlete. I don't know, probably somewhere in like the 4.6 range is where I'd say he's going to run at that size. So I think he can do it. I mean, there's like 210-pound linebackers in the NFL right now. I'm blanking on his name. The guy for the Bills comes to mind, came from Baylor.
Yeah. He gets
Yeah,
pancaked
yeah,
a lot.
yeah. But like certain schemes aren't going to carry. And like even at that size, I think he could just do it. Like I don't even think it needs to be like a certain scheme. I think that guy can just do it. And also like he's young enough, even though he is kind of old for a true junior coming up. I think he's about to turn 22 years old. So like that would be, he's a year more advanced than you'd expect for his grade level. You could still expect some physical development from him, especially if he's on the edge. Like they're telling him, like, hey, get in the weight room, like probably get him up to like the 220 range. Then all of a sudden, you got yourself an NFL linebacker.
Yeah, and I mean most like linebackers play a lot lighter than their listed weight. So like there's
Yeah.
guys playing in the teens in the NFL. I was kind of surprised with Perkins' tape at how much or how little his size was actually like a problem in the run game. Obviously, like, we're projecting to the NFL here, but um, I mean, if somebody sustains the block on him for a really long time, like he will get washed out of the play. And I saw that happen a couple times, but I mean, there are 250-pound edge rushers in college that get abused at the point of attack like way more than Perkins ever
Yes.
did. And I mean, the crafty hands, the way that he proactively, initiates the engagement, prevents blockers from really latching on. He's got all the tools, not the physical tools necessarily, but all the tools like in his tool belt to defeat blocks. And so I think that not going to be a full-time edge in the NFL, but I think he could be a plus run defender if you stick him at off-ball linebacker. What do you think about him as a pass rusher? Like obviously he's got speed. I was a little bit disappointed just with like the technical nuance and stuff, for somebody who's so undersized.
Yeah, see, I wasn't even really concerned about that because in
Yeah.
my mind, I'm just like, he's not an edge. So like I don't really care if he has this full toolbox. It's more of the way he attacks. And
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the run game stuff because I've never seen a guy who's, that undersized who just he'll go, like front side of say like an outside or inside zone play, offensive tackle trying to have a kick out, he'll stalemate him. Like he's 210 pounds and he'll stalemate an offensive tackle. He won't give up ground. And those are just like crazy plays to see for a guy that size. So yeah, as a true pass rusher, I agree. He's not, and it's why I don't think he was more productive because with his sort of athleticism, I think there is even like another gear he could get to at the collegiate level, at least. But in terms of NFL purposes, it's his pass rushing reps are going to look like off-ball linebacker blitzing reps at the next level.
And they kind of already do. Like I feel like he's hard to evaluate as a pass rusher because he's used as a spy so much. So he's kind of just like hovering around the line of scrimmage, which is going to be closer to what he does in the NFL most likely. So what kind of draft range are you thinking for Perkins? Do you have a big board out yet?
I don't have a big board out yet. I would draft. So it's like really hard right now just because, again, he's a sophomore. Need to see what he does next year.
Well, I'm
But
gonna
I
hold
would
you to
draft
this take.
him. What's that?
I'm gonna hold you to this take if you're
Okay,
wrong.
okay. I mean, I would take him top of the third round right now with potential, depending on how he plays next year, to be like a second rounder. I mean, let's be real. It's not going to be a first round type of guy. Um, but I just love the way he plays football. And I would want, top of the thirds where it starts to get like, you're probably not finding starters. I know this guy can do things that will impact, if you're a blitz heavy team, you're going to utilize him in a certain role. I would covet him at that point in the draft right now.
All right. Well, I'm Cory Kinnan. I am the founder, I guess, of Daft on Draft Football, a Substack completely designated for NFL draft content. Do a lot of video content, stuff like that on there as well. Host the Daft on Draft podcast, which James has been a gracious substitute co-host for. But today I'm going to talk about Louisville wide receiver Chris Bell. I had planned with James to talk about Chris Bell a few weeks ago, honestly, last week going over this. And then Dane Brugler dropped his wide receiver ranking with Chris Bell as his wide receiver too, and kind of stole my thunder a little bit. But there's a ton to love at Chris Bell, and starting with his body type, man. It's pretty rare to find wide receivers these days who are 6'1", nearly 6'2", 227. That's a pretty explosive body type, a pretty awesome body type, AJ Brown-ish in terms of the build there. And man, there's just a lot to love about his game. So Chris Bell's definitely my guy.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned the body type, because that's the first thing I want to start with. Like 6'1", 227, it's very specific. And you said AJ Brown. It feels like we get one of these guys like every 2 years, and there's a very wide spectrum of how good they actually
Mhm.
are all are at football, but they all get compared to AJ Brown. So let me just ask you like straight up, do you think that a Chris Bell to AJ Brown comparison is too ambitious? Because I do see some flashes that are pretty similar there, but I think like Xavier Legette might be more of a tame comparison.
Yeah, I think it's a little ambitious. I think AJ Brown is like in the NFL today, one of one. And so like
Yeah.
anytime you get a one of one to guy, it's really hard to comp to. Um, and just there's ways that AJ Brown wins that I hope Chris Bell develops into winning this year that aren't technically like typically there yet. Like I still don't think at 227 Chris Bell is overly dominant through contact at the top of his routes, overly physical off the line of scrimmage. And those are elements of my game where like of his game where I'm like, I want you to get better. And those are elements where AJ Brown completely separates himself from almost every other receiver in the league. Like I don't think there's a more physical wide receiver, especially working down the field, than AJ Brown. So those are the steps I want to see Chris Bell take. But I do think AJ Brown comp is probably a little ambitious right now.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that, of the guys that have come out in this mold, Chris Bell, I think, aside from AJ Brown, is probably the receiver that I see the most promise in. On StatsBomb, they have like separation data for individual routes, and I think something that's really telling about Chris Bell and that bodes well for how he projects to the league is that out of the potential 2026 receivers, he led all of them in average yards of separation on go routes, but then he also had the third highest average separation on curl routes. So it's somebody that's going to be like just really dominating on the vertical plane and just kind of that mental game with corners, his ability to accelerate and then decelerate on a dime.
Hmm.
It's just, I think, a weapon that a lot of receivers at 226 don't have. Did you see that aspect to his game, and what else aside from that, if not, was kind of like his trump card, his most impressive trait to you?
Yeah, I mean, starting with the vertical plane there, like, yeah, the evident burners, instant burners is like one of the first things that pop out to you when you watch Chris Bell's tape. Like his 0 to 100 is instant, and his top end speed is high end. But you mentioned the throttle as well there, and for a guy who's 227, to watch him snap off comebacks and deep outs the way that he does and digs, it's the more steep routes, right? That the 90-degree
Right.
breaks, like it's seamless for the guy at 227. So there's a lot to be bullish there about his tape for sure. The hip sync is violent too. So it's not only like he's a really sudden mover too. So I do want to see him kind of get off the vertical plane. It's not going to happen at Louisville, but like if does go to the NFL level, like can he run every route? And I think he has the skill set to answer a yes to that question, just not like what he's asked to do. He's not an X only either, so he can play in the slot, he can play in the Z, you can move him around a little bit. And I think that's what I want to mention as my most underrated trait, or the trait that sticks out that we haven't talked about yet is what he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch or on
Hmm.
manufactured touches. Like if you go watch the Clemson game, they give him an end around man, and he takes that thing and just like hits it. Jetpack on. Not only that, he makes a dude miss in the open field. So like his ability to cut on a dime is there as well at 227. So like his creativity with the ball in his hands to transition from a receiver to a running back to a ball carrier is exceptional as well. So it's very easy to see why Dane had Bell coming in as wide receiver two. Why I have Bell at my wide receiver two as well. Like there's just a lot to love here with Louisville's Chris Bell.
So Jordan Reid, ESPN. My player is Utah offensive tackle Spencer Fano.
Spencer Fano is one of my favorite players in this class. I'm really glad that you picked him. He's kind of, at least as far as the things that he does at a high level, it's kind of the kind of player that it doesn't really take an eye for talent to identify him as a special prospect. What do you think the biggest strengths of his game are, and why is he the player that you chose?
Well, the first one for me is offensive linemen don't get a lot of love on,
Hmm.
on draft Twitter or the draft community. So I wanted to make sure to shout out an offensive lineman. I think this is the best offensive tackle in this year's upcoming 2026 NFL draft class. It's just the athleticism that pops on tape about him. They use him in so many different ways. And it's not just inside of the box. They do a great job of getting him on the move, whether it's the screen game. They do a good job of pulling him, getting him out in space. I just think he always plays in control, no matter what environment he's in, whether that's when he's on an island or if they ask him to move a lot in the run game as well. And then as a pass protector, I think his feet are really, really good. You never see him off balance. He plays with a lot of control. The name that really comes to mind for me that I wrote down when studying him was Troy Fatanu. I think
Mhm.
they are very similar players. And if you go back and you remember what he was able to do during his time at Washington, there's been some guard tackle debates about him when he was coming out, but I think Fano definitely has the strength and then also the length to survive at tackle, but he does need to gain some weight. That would be one thing I would, or that I did put on the scouting report. I would like to see him gain, 5 to 10 pounds just because he's in that 300 to 305 pound range, which is what he's listed at. We'll see what he does end up weighing if he does end up coming out at the combine this year.
Yeah, I know he played last season at 291. So I think weight and like anchor is probably my biggest concern, especially in the Big 12. I mean, he's just not facing anything near the level of power that he's going to see in the NFL. You talked about his foot speed and pass pro. I think like the run blocking is just dominant. Really, I would put it on a tier with Tyler Linderbaum and Penei Sewell in recent memory, and that's as a true sophomore. But I thought the pass pro, like I was surprised at just how fluid he is. He mirrors people like he's connected to them on a string. I mean, the ability to cut off inside moves, and like even regardless of what his arm length comes in, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. I felt like his outside hand was so strong in pass pro, and that's like he would be able to offset that disadvantage just because he's so firm cutting off those angles. I wanted to ask about the run blocking though. Do you think it kind of stacks up with those dominant performances that we've seen over the last few years? And are there any weaknesses that you see in the run game? Because I was struggling to come up with any.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to put it, he's a dog, man. Like he's a dog in the run game. He tries to humiliate defensive linemen. And it's not just where he tries to make contact. He's running his feet, he's rolling his hips, he's uncoiling those hips in contact, and then he's finishing guys in the dirt. And those are things that really get us excited. So I know his position coach loves going to film on Sundays, just enjoying his film. But it's just the mentality that he plays with. That's what I love a lot about him, but it's also the savvy that he has. And run blocking isn't just trying to finish somebody in the dirt. It's recognizing those funky looks that they get a lot of times, but still deciphering his way, whether it's zone blocking. I think he's an incredible zone blocker, but also for him to be quote unquote undersized, I thought he was really good with those man down blocks as well. Those are some of the things that really concern you with some of those zone scheme oriented offensive linemen. But when they go man gap power, he's not overmatched at all a lot of times with that. So I'm with you. There's not a lot of weaknesses to his game as far as a run blocker, I should say. If there was one thing, you would like to see him play a little bit more under control at times. Sometimes he gets so fixated on finishing guys, he kind of falls off at times. But I think that's more so of a coaching thing and him just playing a little bit more under control. But one thing that I love, I keep saying it, is that he's an absolute finisher in the run game. And that's something that you don't see very frequently, especially with these college offenses.
He's a perfect example of how being able to displace people in the run game is not about being big, really. Like it's about pad level, technique, hand
Mentality,
placement,
man.
leg
Yep.
drive, and finishing mentality, which he definitely has in spades.
What's up? I'm Devin Jackson. I am a sports editor for the Philadelphia Inquirer and also cover the NFL draft. I have covered there for the last 3 years for the Philadelphia Inquirer. But yeah, I'm excited to discuss Isaiah Glasker, the BYU linebacker, who's explosive, fast, and a big athlete that's used all over the formation. So excited to talk about him, and I think he's one of the sleepers in the 2026 NFL draft.
I think I have 16 guests scheduled for this video, and your player was the only one that I had not heard of before you said them, which is kind of like classic Devin if you follow him on Twitter, because my first introduction to a lot of players is seeing Devin tweet about him. So he's got a great eye for talent, and Isaiah Glasker is a perfect example of that. I can't figure out like why he isn't being discussed more. I mean, like, do you have any idea why? To me, it's like a complete player, impacts every phase, checks every measurable athletic box you would look for. Like, what is not to like?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, man. In kind of a ecosystem that loves guys that are big, fast, strong, and that are pure athletes that are used all over the formation. I'm kind of surprised his name hasn't come up. Honestly, my first introduction to him was against Arizona when I was watching Jonas Savanea last year and seeing what he was doing. And you're seeing his number 16 run around and doing crazy stuff. He had like a forced fumble that game. He had like a pick six. Like he was a monster against Arizona. And then, like I tweet about him mid-season, and then I watched him against Colorado. I'm like, there he is again. He's like making life hell for Shador Sanders and Colorado's defense. And I just was watching him against Arizona State just to get a refresher, make sure I wasn't tripping. And same thing. He's meeting Cam Scatterboo in the hole. He's coming off the edge. He's spilling, pullers. Like he's doing a little bit of everything for his BYU defense. I know their linebacker, I think Kelly is his last name. He gets a lot of buzz in this upcoming class, but I think Isaiah Glasker, I mean, he was the best defensive player last year, and I think he has a good chance to be the same thing for BYU and ultimately in the entire Big 12 conference. I think he has a strong case to make a run at Big 12 defensive player of the year this year.
One of only two FBS linebackers last year with at least 3 sacks, 3 interceptions, and a forced fumble. Definitely a cherry pick stat, but he's somebody that kind of stuffs the stat sheet. Like when I was first watching him, I'm trying to put players into boxes, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's a coverage guy. Wait, no, he's a blitzing guy. It's like he pretty much does everything. Where do you think his biggest weakness is as a player? And do you view him as kind of a traditional off-ball linebacker or somebody that's going to be playing more of a hybrid role?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest concern I have is what is his position at the next level. I don't think he has good enough eyes to play stack linebacker right now. I just think he's at his best when he's attacking forward and moving forward towards the line of scrimmage. I thought there were times that he did a pretty good job of like filling the hole, but I know it's like on backside runs, he doesn't always fill the gap soundly. Sometimes he gets sucked in a little bit and allows the bounce back run on the backside of formations. There's a lot of things I think as a stack linebacker, like coverage wise, athleticism wise, that I think matches up for what you want him to do. But I find that he's probably going to be more of a hybrid, kind of down to down type of like you had to figure out where he's best. I think on third downs, I mean, I think that's where it's going to be most fascinating because he can cover the middle of the field, he can cover in the boundary. But are you going to put him out man to man on someone? I don't really think so. And then same thing, with blitzing him. I don't think he has any amazing pass rush moves, but I think he's a really good blitzer, relentless player. So I think this year is going to be about finding a definite role. I think maybe that's why he's not getting talked about as much because is he an edge rusher potential guy? Is he more of a stack linebacker guy? I think he makes probably most sense as a Sam linebacker, in my opinion, just because I think him being that third linebacker role can bring him on blitzes, can make sure he doesn't have to be the main key guy and trying to fill gaps as a Mike or Will linebacker. But I'm very interested to see how BYU deploys him this year. I think the sky is there's a limit for his talent, and I think he's going to find a way to be productive wherever he is. But I will have a hard time making him a true like Mike linebacker at the NFL level, just because I don't think his eye discipline is quite there yet. But maybe if they give him the full-time reps, he has a chance to develop to do that. But I think his talents might lend him to be more of a versatile player, used a little bit all over the place versus being a traditional step linebacker.
Yeah, his tracking data is really impressive. He's like 80th to 90th percentile on most of the metrics. The one thing that they don't really have a way of tracking is change of direction skills and fluidity, which I thought was a bit of a concern for me with Glasker. Like if you watch the Colorado game, I mean, he had that crazy interception on Shador, which is one of the biggest lollipops I've ever seen in like a real football game. That throw, I mean, it
Yeah.
looked like a cartoon character the way that it froze midair. Anyways, but in that same game, he was like running across the field covering Travis Hunter. Hunter slams the brakes, redirects, and he's, kind of wearing stilts. And, Hunter's one of the most dynamic athletes in the NFL, so it makes sense. But it's really important to me for linebackers to be able to make like sudden, flexible lateral movements to kind of weave through traffic. And I wonder if he's able to do that. You also mentioned the man coverage. Like, do I want him covering Jaden Blue on a Texas route? Absolutely not. But when you get him as like a zone dropper, his wingspan gives him so much range in coverage. Like if you're trying to throw over him, you've got to really put extra air on it, because when he reaches his hands up, like he's able to really impact and disrupt passing lanes. So it's a yeah, you mentioned like maybe the fact that he's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. That could be like why he's not getting as much hype. To me, I saw a lot of Zane Collins in his game, who was a player that I really liked as a prospect. And there's like the good and the bad with that, where it's like maybe he just isn't able to come with some aspect of his game that's kind of a trump card. Where do you see his realistic draft range? And then also, where do you have him personally on your board?
Yeah, I have him, I think, just outside of the top 50. So like he's like 54th, I think, right now, on my board. And I think he makes sense in that kind of that third round range where he doesn't have a set position right now, but he's a guy that can be a weapon on the right defense, that can do a lot of good things for you. And I think because of that, him being able to do multiple things, really well, but also nothing that really sticks out. I think that makes him hard to like place like, yeah, he's definitely better than X player, like,
Right.
for example, like the linebacker class, like I really like Deontay Lawson. I really like guys like that have those set rules, those set plays, and you can see their clear projection. I think he just is behind. So I think right now he's like linebacker 6 right now, and kind of that range. I'm grading right now as a linebacker because I think that makes the most sense for him right now. But we'll see once he goes through this process and see how everything goes. But yeah, I think third round makes the most sense. I think he's a top 100 player, no doubt. Like, and no doubt in my mind. But I think figuring out where he's going to play at the next level, I think is going to be whether he goes late second round or could he last to the end of third, early fourth round. So
Yeah, we've seen the story too many times to where like I just probably wouldn't take a player like this in the first round anymore.
yeah,
Like if I
exactly.
don't, if the first concern is that I don't know what position you're going to play, that's kind of like day two cap. But man, if you get him like second or third round and there's not like a ton of pressure that he has to be this foundational, every down guy, and he can just kind of be a fun weapon, totally agree with the value there.
What's up, everybody? I'm JP Acosta. I am the lead NFL writer for SB Nation. I write about football wherever football is being played. And my sleeper slash guy that I just really like is Notre Dame wide receiver Jaden Greathouse. He's a junior. He's actually a guy that I started scouting back when he was a Northwestern target in high school. And I immediately knew watching him in high school, like, this guy is going to be an NFL prospect. I think my favorite thing about him so far is just the ability to separate and get open. I think I go back to watching guys like Jordan Addison, where I just call them professional get openers. I said the same thing about Mekek Buka. I said the same thing about Chris Olave. I say the same thing about Jaden Greathouse, and just his ability from the slot to not only create separation in the short to intermediate areas, but actually prove against teams like Ohio State and Penn State that he can separate vertically as well as being a tough yards after the catch target. So I'm a big fan of his. I think there are still some things he has to iron out about his game, but he is definitely my favorite sleeper going into this cycle.
So when you said Jaden Greathouse, I kind of got excited because like I've been scouting this class all summer. I hadn't watched Jaden Greathouse, but when you watch the 2026 draft class, you end up watching a lot of Notre Dame players and a lot of Penn State players. And I always start with the playoff games. So I've seen that route that he ran against Penn State where he broke that dude's ankles for the touchdown. I've seen that probably like 8 times. Like every time I watch a new player, it's like, oh, there's that route again. And I wasn't disappointed with his tape. I mean, I think obviously he had his best, couple games to end the season, which is what you want to see, especially for a summer scouting prospect. But like you said, it's the separation and just kind of like such a bulletproof, like well-rounded skill set for such a young player. 6'1", 210 pounds is what he's listed at. We'll say 6 foot. Give him the tax there. Only one career drop, and he's got an 81% career contested catch rate, 13 for 16. Dude is automatic on slot fades. Doesn't really have like a great top gear, but he can kind of power step to his top gear quickly and stack man coverage on those slot fades. Surprisingly productive after the catch. I think like the salesmanship, the rocker steps on those posts and in breakers. There's just so many ways that he can win, and so many things that he does at a high level. So many areas where he's technically polished at 21 years old. It's easy to see why people view him as such a promising prospect. So I have a couple questions for you about Greathouse, because there were some hangups that I had. I want to see if we have kind of like the same biggest weakness. What would you say is the biggest knock, weakness, thing that's going to hold Jaden Greathouse back in the NFL?
I think you mentioned it, but it is the lack of a true top gear. I think again, if I'm guessing what he's gonna run, it's not gonna be anywhere in the 4.4s. I would say he's gonna be closer to the mid 4.5s, maybe. And I think that is fine for a receiver, but you can tell that his game is predicated on winning within those first 10 yards. Like you said, he's got that power step to get to his top gear quickly, but his top gear isn't as great as some of the other receivers in this class. I also worry a little bit about him surviving on the outside. I think potentially you could see him potentially being sort of a slot only receiver. And you wonder with guys like, I mean, if we're going back to last year's class with Luther Burden, he fell all the way to the second round because he was sort of a slot only receiver. So you just wonder if he can provide that same explosion, if he can provide that same contested catch rate on the outside, despite not being an overwhelming athlete at six, like you said, 6 feet 212. It's hard to win on the outside without elite speed, and you're not Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden Greathouse is kind of weird because he is slow. Like, I'll look at some of the tracking data. Top speed, ninth percentile for college receivers last year. Elite deep route, elite deep speed play percentage was 24th percentile. Average get off yards was 33rd percentile. So he's kind of like in that 20 to 30 range for most of the metrics. But the thing with his speed is that I actually worry about it more as an intermediate route runner than I do as like a vertical threat, because the number one weakness that I wrote is like, this dude cannot outrun off coverage on a drag route. Like that's where I really saw him got beat. Like I was actually pleasantly surprised with how effective he was, creating vertical separation, and the numbers kind of bear that out. StatsBomb has average separation yards by route, and Jaden Greathouse on post routes was in the 91st percentile in average separation yards, 3.4. And you can really see it with how effective that rocker step is. He can really cross the defender's face, get him to open his hips. Even on go routes and fades, 67th percentile separation. But then you look at drags, 3rd percentile. Slants, 12th percentile. So I think really it's like, in a short area, can you outrun a defender and extend leverage, as opposed to like, I'm kind of confident in him being able to track the ball over his shoulder, make those tight window grabs. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting skill set. Do you have any like player comps that came to mind for him? I just like had to give up. I couldn't think of one.
So I'm partially going to steal this one from Cory Kinnan, who hit me with it when I was talking about Greathouse earlier this summer. Tyler Boyd. That's kind of where I'm sort of thinking his best role is being more of a slot receiver. But you think of a guy, like you said, who can win in those contested catch situations. He's a reliable player when it comes to creating separation. When it comes to, I think he's also an effort blocker. It's not like you're not gonna ask him to like wham on a defensive line. You're not gonna ask him to thud up against linebackers, but he's gonna give effort. He's a tough yards after the catch runner, but there's some athletic limitations that kind of limit him to being maybe just a good number 2 or number 3 in an NFL offense. But that is something where, if you're looking at NFL offenses now, some of your best number 2, number 3s are making a lot of money still. So I think that's his NFL ceiling potentially. I would love to see him get faster. I think that'd make himself a lot of money, but that's where I kind of see him as being that Tyler Boyd-ish type of player.
So, looking at the consensus board, you are kind of out on an island with Jaden Greathouse. You've got him 18th, which I appreciate the boldness. I've got two questions for you. So, kind of answer this a little bit, but number one, what do you think? What boxes do you think Jaden Greathouse needs to check to be a first round pick next year? And if you had to predict where he's going to go, like I know that's your individual ranking, where do you think, what range do you think he's going to go in the draft?
So, as the first question, I think, like I said, with the boxes he needs to check is creating consistent separation with speed. Like you said, he's just not the fastest athlete, although he has shown he can win in spite of that. I think that's something that he needs to continue to check off on those boxes. And then Notre Dame's going to be starting another new quarterback. They're going to be bringing in a completely new guy, and I want to see him kind of take that commanding role as the number one receiver on this team. You know, they're filtering guys in and out, but I think Greathouse can be the number one guy on that team. You can design an offense around him. So I want to see him sort of step into that number one role. It's tough to project where he's going to go range wise because this receiver class is really just weird overall. Like there are guys where like I think Denzel Boston is the best receiver in this class. I think you have guys like Carnell Tate. I think Casey Concepcion from who's now at Texas A&M. They all kind of fit into this category of like they are good, but trying to pick who's going to be the first one off the board and how many are going to go in the first round is a little tough because there's a whole lot that can change in between now and then. I'm going to be on the safe side. I'm going to say I think right now his projection is more of a day two uh as a prospect. I think like second, third round, but with a really good year for a Notre Dame team that's going to play a lot of big nationally televised games against a lot of really good prospects, that he could probably rise into the late first round range.
All right, so my player for this segment, I had a tough time choosing between 3 or 4 guys, but I settled on Penn State defensive tackle Zane Durant. Not because he's my favorite player or my highest rated player, but because I think he's one of the most intriguing guys in the draft based on, his body type, his talent, and what he can become if he reaches his peak potential, right? He was on Feldman's Freaks list, so he's not really a sleeper. He's kind of in the mainstream. We know that he's a freak athlete, and Penn State has a habit of producing those types of players. He was incredibly productive at the high school level, 15 and a half sacks as a senior. And then last year, 3 sacks, 11 tackles for loss at Penn State. 6'1", around 290, over 32-inch arms. And then he's documented. Now, Feldman's Freaks, sometimes the numbers don't live up to snuff when it comes to combine time. They don't quite reach that level. But some of the numbers in there are absurd. You're looking at a 4.66 40-yard dash, a 9.10 broad, a 30.5-inch vertical, right? And then the power clean too. So this dude is explosive. He is surprisingly flexible for his size too, right? And he's got that power element. But whenever you see those numbers, you want to go to the tape and see if it corroborates. And I think the tape does. I think he's very explosive. I think the natural propulsion in his lower body is very, very effective. He gets off the snap extremely quick. And even though he's not the biggest guy, right? 6'1", 290 with 32-inch arms, he's got decent proportional length and natural leverage, great natural leverage, but he's a little smaller, not as much lean mass. But he's able to supplement his power output with that just elite explosion that he has. He generates so much momentum and he can channel that into force at the point of attack. So I love that part of his game. He's talented. He's trending up. And I think as a one-gapping penetrator, there's a ton of upside for him.
The first thing you mentioned is the freaks list. I'm actually working on an article right now where I'm like fact checking historically the freaks list to try to see if there's certain schools that are lying. Spoiler, Michigan is BSing y'all. But actually, Penn State was pretty accurate. I think they were like 7 for 9 or something like that. Okay. But yeah, when I saw those Zane Durant numbers, I was like, yeah, we'll see about that. Yep. But no, I mean, he's a freak athlete. I think kind of the epitome of a slashing defensive tackle. Like my just kind of lasting image of Zane Durant is like, you're just watching a big mess of an offensive line, and then like out of nowhere, he just shoots through 4-yard TFL. Yep. Basically lives in the opponent's backfield. I think he led all of college football in run disrupts last year, 52. That's a stats bomb metric that they have. So you mentioned a slashing kind of one gapping type of player. What do you think, like, where would you not put him? Obviously, he's not playing nose tackle. What do you think kind of his limitations, where he needs to improve to raise his draft stock this year? Like, what are you looking for when you turn on Zane Durant's tape next year?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question. And I think it's because whenever we see these hyper talented guys, a lot of times it gets lost in the noise. Like, oh, he's so talented. He has this going for him at his peak moments. But I think with Zane Durant in particular, there's still a lot of room for growth, which is exciting, right? But yeah, let's talk about what he's not. I think, I've always had an affinity for these natural leverage guys who have really good pad level just naturally, but then also
I'm
proportional
with
length.
you, totally with you on this.
Johnny Newton, I was a big fan of him, right? Tyleik Williams from this previous class, very different players within that mold, right? But I think one thing, and I can use those two to juxtapose what Durant doesn't have right now. I don't think he's nearly as sturdy at the point of attack as a guy like Tyleik Williams. And part of that comes from, being under 300 pounds, right? But also I think he's very predisposed to get upfield. He's an attacker. He's a slasher, right? And I think because of that, there are times where he either gives up his gap discipline, just kind of flushes upfield and clears open lanes for the runner, or if he's on the front side of a down block, like he's going to get flushed out of the play because he's turning his hips too early and they can just pave him because his base isn't properly aligned, right? He does have flashes of being able to stack guys and kind of withstand. And I think for his frame, like the natural leverage helps a lot. He's got a lot of really compact, lean mass and not a ton of bad weight on that frame. And that allows him to play bigger than his size. But I think the gap discipline goes away a lot of the time. So I think in run defense, I want to see more of that. And then kind of juxtaposing him with the Johnny Newton, right? One thing that Johnny Newton had that I don't think Zane Durant has quite yet is the elite flexibility, the ankle flexion, right? I do think there are really nice flashes of the hip flexibility where Durant's able to overrun a reach block and then hinge inside and enter pursuit. And that's a great trait to have. But I also think there are times when, Penn State, because he has that slashing lateral athleticism, because he has the explosive range to shade across gaps as a stunter too, they'll try and use him like that. And there are times where he can't quite get that front foot around when he's trying to penetrate exterior gaps. And because of that, again, his hips are facing outside, he gets sealed out, right? So I think the bend component isn't quite there as much as you want for a smaller guy. And I also don't think he's quite as sturdy or as disciplined in the run game when you're asking him to just kind of limit displacement, right? Yeah, I think if you're asking him to be a one gapper and seal off gaps and establish a half man relationship, he does have the physical traits to do it with that proportional length. But I think his play style, he needs to learn to rein it in, not always go for the play in the backfield, because sometimes if you go for that, you're clearing open space for guys to get upfield. So it's a tricky, Cliff Notes version, he's a young player. He's still growing, and I think he's going to be able to iron that out. But because he's not the most bendy guy in his lower body, I do think he has really good ankle flexion, but I don't think it's at that elite level where he's showing he can get outside. And even then, he's got to work on his upper lower synergy, flipping his hips at the right time, right? So those things are still in development. If he can build on that, he can be an incredible player, but he's still not quite complete within that mold.
First rounder, well, potential first rounder. For me, he's actually a player that's inside my top 15 right now. Georgia linebacker C.J. Allen. And James, newsflash, Georgia has a linebacker that's probably going to be a high pick when it's all said and done if he decides to declare for the 2026 NFL draft. I really like this player, from instincts to tackling in space, the physicality he brings. He gives me, and it's high praise, but he reminds me a little bit of Roquan Smith, and just the manner and the demeanor he plays with, and how quickly he gets downfield, how he triggers. And I appreciate the processing speed and quickness that he has as well. And it feels like, going through summer scouting, and I just kind of surveyed Twitter, and I was like, man, I have not seen anybody really talk about Georgia linebacker C.J. Allen, but when I turned on the tape and everything, wrote for him over at Bleacher Report, and whatnot, man, I really appreciated his game. And I was like, all right, from the Kobe Dean to Quay Walker, and they have another one, Raylan Wilson, number 5, who's also another big, freakish athlete and everything and whatnot. But I really like what C.J. Allen brings. And I think an NFL team that wants a stud middle linebacker that could potentially maybe play the will, depending on what front you're in and if you already have your mic situated. Definitely, I advise everybody to get eyes on C.J. Allen.
Yeah, C.J. Allen stuck out to me pretty clearly as the best linebacker in this class. You said you have him 15?
He's top 15. Like, well,
Top
actually, no.
15?
Matter of fact, he's right at the bottom of my top 10. I just dropped that on the Locked On NFL Draft
Oh, nice.
podcast and everything. I'm pretty sure I caught Keith off guard with that. My co-host. Well, I don't think he was expecting that, but I'm really high. I'm really bullish on CJ Allen right now.
Well, I mean, there's so many things that he does at a high level already at 21 years old. Well, he'll be 21 when
Right.
he's drafted. One of the best athletes in this class, like tracking data is all 80th to 90th percentile. And you see that pursuit speed. I mean, the first game that I watched was Georgia Tech, and he had a couple reps in that game. Like there's one forced fumble where it's just like, the way I said it is his speed. Like if the ball carrier's speed is in, his speed is in +1, basically. It's like, it's just kind of a foregone conclusion that he's going to win the pursuit angle. So the natural athleticism is there. I think he's a little bit too easy to get on the ground still in the run game.
Yeah.
But plays with a great motor. I think it's so rare to see, especially young linebackers that have even like adequate instincts. I'm used to just like, you've really got to use your imagination and be like, yeah, well, if he learns how to play the position, he could be pretty good at the position. And I mean, CJ Allen still has work to do, but I think he's ahead of the curve there.
Yeah.
What do you think, in your view, is the main thing that you're looking for CJ Allen to improve this year to kind of vault his way into the top 10?
Kind of what you talked about, right? Like being on the ground. Like when you're a linebacker, he's listed at 6'1", 230, 235, somewhere in there. We gotta get the official measurements because these schools do not always tell us the truth. But I think for me, it's going. How does he handle this year with in the SEC those climbing guards, right? Those interior offensive linemen. If you're playing and your tackles, your D tackles aren't pretty much clogging the gaps, aren't taking up that space, and keeping those that guard center guard trio, keeping them occupied, and they do get up to you. What is your plan against that? 'Cause that's really going. That's to me is what going to decide if he plays true Mike backer. Like in the NFL, you can climb up to Fred Warner all day long. It doesn't mean it's going to be successful. It's not a successful rep. You can climb to Roquan Smith, same thing. It's not going to be always going to be a successful rep. So how does he counter that on a consistent basis? I think they got Alabama on the schedule like mid-season this year. They have a pretty solid schedule, so he should see some run game, different things like that. That's going to be part of my biggest thing. And then just dropping off in the coverage consistently, getting to his spots quickly. How much depth can we expect you to get at the next level? Are you going to be a deep spot dropper, or are you going to be kind of that 5 to 7 range? Can we run some variety of coverages or even trap coverages where we bring the safeties down, rotate you as the deep middle of the field defender, and you have that ability to sit, move laterally, and gain that depth. I think that's what I'm really gonna be paying attention to for him. But just off of summer scouting, I really like his game. I really like his game. And like I said, once we get to draft season and get the official measurements, that's going to be a big thing. Is he truly 6'1", 235? Does he have like 32, 31-inch arms? What is his arm length? But on the field, I want to see him just handle those blocks, and then how much depth is he going to be getting, and how functional athletically will he be as a spot dropper?
Yeah, I had him at 32 and 1/8 based off of the eye test. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the coverage. That was going to be my final question. So Florida, I think Florida was the second game I watched. Maybe when I watched the Florida game, I thought I was scouting like a Hall of Fame talent. I was like, oh boy, we're about to like this dude is going to be like the next, modern prototype 3-down linebacker. He made some insane. I don't know if you watched the Florida game.
Yes.
But like, I mean, the interception, where he kind of like zoned off into the passing lane, and then one where he's basically off the screen and is able to make a recovery, drive into a passing window. There's really impressive natural talent there. And then like you see the ability to run the pull. He's got plenty of range, and range to the sideline as well. Like if you want to get him out leverage with pre-snap motion, try to flip it to a speedy running back, like he's going to hawk him down pretty consistently. So the natural skills are there in coverage. I thought there was like some coverage busts, not terrible, but still a little bit sloppy. And I want to see I'm interested to see like what he's like changing directions in man coverage, because he gave up a touchdown to Jaden Blue that just like kind of is burned into my brain. And I mean, those angle routes are deadly. So
They're deadly.
Nothing to be ashamed of. But
No.
That's really like the big step that I want to see. But it's not like going from bad to playable. It's going from solid to like that's a true strength of your game.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, my name is Jacob Infante. I'm the lead draft analyst at Windy City Gridiron and an NFL draft analyst at Pro Football and Sports Network. And the guy I want to talk about today is Cayden Green, guard prospect out of the University of Missouri. He was initially a starter at the University of Oklahoma, transferred over to Missouri, and he had a really good 2024 season. And he's someone that I'm looking for in 2025 to be one of the best offensive linemen in the nation potentially, and therefore a top prospect in the 2026 NFL draft.
Jacob, I appreciate you giving me the push that I needed to go ahead and watch Cayden Green. He had been sitting at the top of my list for like a couple weeks now, and thoroughly enjoyed his tape. I would agree with you that he's going to be in contention for one of the best offensive linemen in America. What do you think Cayden Green's biggest strength is as a player? Like if you're drafting him as a GM and you're kind of giving a one-line elevator pitch to your owner that's sitting next to you, what are you saying about Cayden Green?
I love the power that Green plays with, honestly. I think when you look at his ability to take defenders head on, you're seeing that really good grip strength. And, when he gets his hands located properly, he's, very tough to shed as a defensive lineman. Yep. And he has a powerful anchor and the ability to drive defenders off the ball. I come away just really impressed, especially at the SEC level. Those are NFL caliber guys that he's going up against on a weekly basis. And when you turn on the tape, you see the ability to overwhelm defenders at the point of attack. And I think that's there are a handful of things that I like about him, but that's the one thing that really stands out to me about him on tape is just the power that he can generate that's well proportioned throughout his frame.
All right, I planned this out perfectly. I was hoping you would say that because that's I think like the number one thing that stood out to me about Cayden Green. I mean, I think he was 20 years old last year, true junior, like you said, playing in the SEC. And I mean, I think that I've probably watched like 30 something offensive linemen. I would say he generated movement as consistently as anyone besides probably like Caden Proctor and Spencer Fano, right up there with them. And I think the specific thing that sticks out with Cayden Green is it's not like he can just drive people off the line of scrimmage. He has that combination of drive power with his lower body and then torque and control with his upper body. So, he's taken total command of the block. He doesn't just drive people generally downfield. He steers them exactly where he wants them to go. And, as his play strength continues to improve, I think he's only going to get more effective in that phase. There aren't a lot of like whiffed blocks compared to what I was expecting. I really like Cayden Green in a gap scheme. Now, Missouri's kind of interesting because Missouri is basically like Arthur Smith offense, wide zone kind of play action boot off of that style of offense. And so they run a ton of wide zone. What did you think about Cayden Green as a zone blocker? I'm kind of torn on him in that kind of scheme.
Yeah, so I think, I'm with you, honestly. I think that while definitely his 2024 season at Mizzou was better from a tape perspective than his 2023 at Oklahoma, just naturally being a sophomore compared to a freshman, I do think that Oklahoma, the fact that they use a little bit more gap than Mizzou does, I think is a better fit for him specifically. I say as I'm trying to get my cat off the table, but I think that I'm definitely with you. I think that his skill set in particular translates pretty well in a gap scheme, or inside zone for that matter. He can play in wide zone, but I think that's not necessarily going to be his best fit at the NFL level. And I think because of that, part of it is the lateral quickness and the ability to redirect in space I don't want to say it's bad by any means, but I think it's not the strength of his game. I think there are some instances where defenders can work across his body. Whether it's him as a down blocker or him in pass protection against, delayed blitzes. I think that's something that, sometimes shows up on tape as a weakness of his, or, at least an inconsistency. But I'm definitely with you. I think the movement he generates in the run game, the ability to control defenders at the point of attack, with his grip strength and his ability to land his strikes with proper timing and placement, I think really benefits him in a gap scheme as well. So I think that obviously, wherever he ends up, he's going to have to play some zone in some capacity. But I think that's one thing I want to see Green get a little bit better at is his agility on the move and his ability to work across his body, whether it's as a down blocker, as a reach blocker, or going up against blitz and defenders.
It's weird. I thought he was very like boom bust as a zone blocker. There are some guys that you watch and it's like this guy just can't play in a wide zone scheme. That's not what my takeaway from Cayden Green was. It's just like it's not even really an athletic limitation on a lot of his zone losses. He's just like too passive. I don't know if you've noticed that, but there's a lot of like backside cutoffs where he doesn't really even touch his defender until they're like 5 or 6 yards down the line of scrimmage, and then it's just kind of an easy play for him to make. The last thing that I wanted to touch on, you kind of hit on a little bit, and it's the foot speed, and specifically as it relates to pass pro, because that was my biggest concern with him. It's interesting, he had some losses like across his face and edge to edge and stuff, but that wasn't actually like had really solid pass pro tape last year. The thing that I noticed, I noticed it so many times, is there are a lot of plays where he would be like, he'd identify a free runner or a delayed blitz, or he'd see his teammate getting beat and he wants to like slide over into the B gap and help him out. And he just doesn't have the foot speed and the short area burst to like cover a little bit of ground quickly. That's the thing that I worry about with him. How do you feel about him as being like a complete, well-rounded player? Do you think he's going to be somebody that has those kind of liabilities, or, are you expecting him to take another jump this year?
Yeah, so that's going to be the one big thing that I'm looking for him this year is, and I'm definitely with you. When I turn on the tape, there's some instances where, maybe they have him blocking a little bit out more in space, or he has to cover significantly more ground due to, the rush package they're facing, or, just the design of the play itself, where you're right. He doesn't have that foot quickness on a consistent basis to be able to cover a significant amount of ground. I think that in the run game, his acceleration off the line of scrimmage is good. I think that, but it's sometimes the pass protection where if he's not in that condensed space, he can struggle a little bit more. And I think from a technical perspective, he does a good job. I think he keeps a wide base. I think that his pad level and his weight distribution is pretty good, all things considered. But I think that's fair. His ability to change direction isn't necessarily amazing at this point. I think if he can improve on that, you're looking at him as a first-round prospect because, like I've said, you have the play strength, you have the technical refinement. He plays with a pretty determined mindset. And then obviously, him being by the end of this year, he'll be a 3-year starter at the Power 4 level. That's an encouraging resume. You've got a lot to go off of there. So, I think the foot speed and pass pro is something that I'm going to look at as well. If you can improve on that, then I think there's a very high ceiling for him and a high ceiling for his draft stock next year.
Yeah, 21-year-old guard with probably like 34-inch arms, 2.5 years of experience in the SEC playing at a high level. I think that's the kind of thing the NFL values.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dalton Miller. I used to work at Pro Football Network as their lead NFL analyst, and I was a part of their scouting department for a long time. And today I am talking about somebody who I think is going to leap into the top 10 NFL draft conversation heading into the 2026 NFL draft. That is Texas offensive tackle Trevor Goosby.
When I kind of started this project, my hope was that people would come up with these kinds of players, like players that I hadn't watched, needed to get to. And so I'm like 10 minutes removed from watching Trevor Goosby's tape, and I 100% agree that he's one of the more promising tackles and what I think is a really strong tackle class. When I watch Trevor Goosby, I mean, I think that he has just natural starting left tackle pass blocking traits. And I mean, that's obvious, like a couple plays into his tape. I was really impressed by how polished his hand usage was relative to, most tackles of his age and experience. And I mean, obviously there's stuff to clean up, but I just think he's really ahead of the curve. What do you think as far as pass pro are like the biggest strengths that he brings to the table?
Oh man, I mean his grip strength and length is conspicuous. It's so clear to me that he is just a naturally strong player when it comes to those hands, and that's on both sides of the ball as well. Because there was a time, particularly in the Clemson game, where he was playing right tackle, and I will say he is definitely not as natural on the right side as he is on the left side. And I just assume that he grew up playing left tackle and was the best player on every football field that he stepped on. So there was no reason to play right tackle. But there was a play where TJ Parker, a potential top 5 pick in this class, beats him inside. I mean, it is a nice move. He feigns outside, he cuts in, crosses his face, and Goosby gets that inside hand up onto the left shoulder pad and just stonewalls him on the recovery. And that's just the type of thing that you do not see very often. And you definitely don't see from a 19 or 20-year-old who was thrown to the wolves playing right tackle for the first time, potentially, since he was a small child. So I think for me, it's just the natural, like you said, there's just natural ability to understand how to win in pass protection. And the confidence to have it, even when there is a little bit more thinking going on, because it wasn't as smooth playing on the right side. You could tell he was a little bit crookier with his feet. It was a little bit off with his hands, especially the outside hand, that right hand. But man, he is just so consistent and so good at just getting the job done.
I'm glad you mentioned the inside moves, because that was one of the main things that stuck out to me, is having that catch hand ready and being able to just cut off any angle, even when he gets beat initially through the B gap. I was a little bit disappointed with him in the run game, although there were flashes. And I kind of watched his tape reverse chronologically. I thought the Texas A&M game was great, which was like his first big. I don't think he started, but played 74 snaps. What do you think about Goosby in the run game?
Not as good. He's definitely going to have to improve there. It's tough too, because like I just got done rewatching or watching Caden Proctor, and that's somebody who like just could literally move a house. I think he could move the house off of a foundation. So we're looking at a really good run blocker there. And for Goosby, I think that there is the natural ability there. I don't think that he is a freak athlete in the same way that like Tristan Wirfs is.
Right.
But I think that he is in that top tier of athleticism. I think that especially in the run game, getting to the second level or getting out in space, I think there's too much thinking. And I think that there's not that confidence in just going and getting the job done out there, where I think, he's trying to think about the angle that he has to take. He's trying to break down.
There was a Georgia play that's exactly like that, like a screen.
Yeah, he's just not
Walker.
He's not just going out and being an athlete. And I think he did a better job of that as the season went on, because obviously Texas runs a ton of screens. He gets out in open space quite a bit. And he had a rep against Clemson where I think it was number 20 was out there in space, and he locked in on him and blew him into the sideline. So you want to see those sorts of things when he gets out into space, but you do want to see him get to the point when it comes to climbing to the second level and just having a little bit better connection with his offensive guard in combos and climbing, a little bit better awareness. But I think that might just come with a little bit more playing time. And then a little bit, and this might just be the cap on his athleticism, cutting guys off in zone on the backside, cutting off that B gap defender and getting to the to be able to cross face and slide that off. And I think part of that is just a little bit of a technique thing. Just use your backside. Use your backside because you're not going to be able to get there, get that hand through, and then swivel and seal. Just use that backside and seal it that way.
Yeah, if I had any disagreements, I would let you know. But I mean, you're pretty much reading off my scouting report. It's like a little bit sloppy at the second level sometimes, and then the backside cutoffs. I appreciate you so much for joining me. What grade do you have on Goosby heading into the season?
He will be a top 5 player for me heading into.
Oh, really?
It's just the pass pro for him is that good for me. The upside at such a young age and with very, very minimal playing time. Like the players that he had to face were Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, TJ Parker, Peter Woods, Michael Williams, Damon Wilson II.
Yeah.
Like some of the best players in the country. It wasn't like the Utah Cats who were playing against Utah State, like Southern Utah. He's
2-star defensive end from Arizona or whatever.
The best of the best and playing at a high level, being thrown to the wolves, not as the starter, especially in that A&M game, not as the starter. He came into that game for an injured Banks. So just wonderful, wonderful potential for him.
My name is Sam Teets, and I'm the sports writer and editor for Sports Talk with Sam Teets on Substack. And one of my favorite players in the 2026 NFL draft class is Northwestern edge Anto Saka. In terms of explosiveness, the ability to generate quick and immediate pressure, Anto Saka has one of the best first steps in the class, not to mention a bit of a broad upper body that kind of makes up for his lack of dominant arm length, so he's able to generate some speed to power, walk back offensive tackles into the pocket, post quick wins through the B gap. To me, he's not a complete player just yet, but with more time and more experience, he can develop into a 3-down player capable of being a dominant force and being one of your team's primarily pass rushers. I view this player as a top 50 prospect in the class, and my hope is that this year he'll gain significant experience and maybe even propel himself into the late first round.
So Anto Saka is a guy that I know you've been kind of talking about him for a while. I discovered him last year, literally just sorting through pass rush win rate. I was like, okay, Anto Saka leading the league. Let's check him out. And his tape was awesome in 2023 on a small sample size. Had that sack against Graham Barton, some really high quality wins. And I'm excited to talk about him because I mentioned him in the last video that I posted on this channel, but kind of just briefly hit on him. And I think he's one of the more fascinating players in this class because there's a lot of kind of DPR speed rushers this year. David Bailey, R. Mason Thomas, Anto Saka kind of fits that mold, but I really like Saka's power profile compared to those two. Like he's really the one that I feel confident about being able to generate a pro caliber bull rush. And I think you combine that with his speed rushing skill set, the cross chop, stab chop, really well-rounded move set. I think he's got really the perfect starting point as a pass rusher. Is there anything on his pass rushing tape that you were a little bit underwhelmed with or concerned with? I mean, it's mostly very good, but what do you are there any hangups with you for Anto Saka as a pass rusher?
Yeah, I kind of already mentioned the arm length to me is not fantastic. And I don't think the bend is top shelf either. When you talk about some of these RDPRs like David Baylor, Armis, and Thomas, I think the bend for them is quantifiably elite. I don't think Saka gets there. Saka does a good job of really dipping that inside shoulder and playing low. But at the same time, I don't think the bend in the hips is quite the same level as some of those other players. But you brought the basic moveset. I really like what he's built so far. To me, it's more displaying the pass rush plan with consistency down to down. He'll just have too many reps where he's going out there, and he's a very violent and frantic player to some extent, which is a good thing to start with. But he needs to be more of control. He needs to have more purpose on a down-to-down set. But because he already has like the basic rush plan, the basic rush moves, he's got that level upper body physicality. And you can see it just with the pads on. He seems to have this much more broad upper body compared to some of these other guys. And the muscles just pop off tape. And he has that power to really knock back offensive linemen to the pocket. The floor is there for him right now. It just to me, like, I don't know why this guy's getting more reps. Honestly, like, why is Northwestern? This is, to me, is clearly your best player. Has been one of your best players for the past 2 years. I don't know why he has fewer than 400 career snaps at this point. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think he can develop into a 3-down player, but they don't give him enough snaps on rundowns to really test things out and figure things out for himself. So I think this is a player who's been underdeveloped in this program. I know last year he dealt with a bit of a rib injury in the second half of the season. You can look at like even just like box score scouting, you can see like first half of the year, fantastic. Then hit like the midpoint, and then just everything goes down.
Well,
it's because he's dealing with the rib injury, but he was fantastic in that first half.
Yeah, I watched the first half of his season like during the season, and then kind of stopped watching him because it seemed like he probably wasn't going to declare. But then got back to his tape, and yeah, there was a steep drop off from that injury. His pass rush win rate was 26.8% in the first 5 games, and it fell to 3.9% over the last 6. And I thought he was like noticeably less athletic during that stretch while he was injured. So yeah, that doesn't concern me too much, but man, Saka, like I was looking, he has, I think Saka and David Bailey are the only edge rushers in this class that had an average get off yards of 3 yards or more. And part of that is that they're on the field for pass rushing snaps. So they're firing off the snap every play. But I think he has elite speed rush potential. Final thing that I want to discuss with you about Saka, you kind of hit on, but it's the run defense. Do you view Saka as like this is probably just going to be a designated pass rusher? Or do you think he's a guy with like some concerns because he hasn't really played on early downs, but you think there's like upside that he could be a 3-down player?
So I'm actually a little bit more concerned with guys like obviously Thomas, obviously he's the arm length, and also David Bailey than I am with Saka, because Saka has a ridiculous motor. So to some extent, that gives you a little bit of a floor for the player. Not great arm length, but I think because he has the upper body bulk and definition, he's able to create some stack and shed opportunities. Doesn't have great arm length, but he's able to stack blockers with a long arm. And I think there are reps on tape as well of him coming in and really stonewalling, pulling guards on gaps runs. So he has a level of physicality. He has the play strength to pull this off. To me, it's more comes down to anchoring. It's not necessarily the best for him in terms of like when he gets double teamed, you can see him get moved off the ball. He doesn't really have obvious answers to those types of scenarios right now.
Yeah.
He can kind of get locked up and have trouble getting off of blocks when guys kind of like get into his pads and really latch down on him. Part of me thinks that's just him not having the experience and technique developed right now, because we know he has the upper body power to kind of shuck blockers. We've seen that in the past. So to me, it's more of a consistency issue and a technique issue than it is a physical limitation for him in the run game, because I think he has that 3-down potential. Him and Rousseau, the edge from Alabama, who's probably not going to declare this year. But both those guys, to me, undersized players who have legitimate power and have 3-down upside versus players like David Bailey, who has maybe more prototypical length, but I'm a little bit more concerned about in terms of like the toughness, the want to really run through the face of the guy across from you. I don't know if he has that. I don't know if Saka has that. But to me, it's really technique and a little bit of awareness too. He tends to sometimes almost lose track of the ball, I feel like, in run plays. He just doesn't quite have eyes on it at all times. But to me, it's correctable. It's just a question of how many years this takes, because I don't know if this development's going to happen within the Northwestern program at this point. He's got one more year of eligibility. To me, you're looking at a player who I think hits that 3-down potential mark within the first, I'll say, 2 years of his contract, maybe a late year 2 or early year 3 of a rookie deal. I don't know. Like year 1, I think you're looking at purely a DPR if he comes out for 2026. But I do think in the long term, you're getting a 3-down player.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Max Chadwick. I'm a football analyst at PFF, covering both college football and the NFL, and of course the NFL draft too. And I think TJ Parker from Clemson is the best edge rusher in the 2026 NFL draft.
Max, I'm excited to have you on here. I have TJ Parker as my edge too. He is right behind Ruben Bain, but he is a top 5 player for me. And I think somebody that projects as a blue chip, perennial Pro Bowler caliber player. We'll start with his pass rushing. What do you think about TJ Parker makes him such a great pass rusher? What do you think his number one trait or skill is in that phase?
I think just the explosiveness off the ball into his bull rush, into his power is what I loved. And, watching more and more tape back, I know you did a great video on Jared Verse and why he was so good as a defensive rookie of the year, obviously last year. And you look at that and, I'm not saying the comparison maybe is 1-to-1 with TJ Parker, but you kind of see the same mold in your head of, okay, this guy is devastating power. There are multiple times on his tape where he's running back off his tackles, just completely bulldozing them on the way to the quarterback. So the bend is never going to be the best, right? He's 265 pounds. He's a bigger edge rusher, so you won't have the elite bend that you have for some other guys. But I think the speed to power from TJ Parker is what I loved on his tape. I think he does a really good job with hand fighting too against tackles too. So, and he was very productive last year, right? He had 12 sacks last year. He had 80 plus grades both as a pass rusher and as a run defender. So I think all around game is what you get from TJ Parker right now.
Something that I try to do, especially if it's an ACC pass rusher, is like remove any reps against Pittsburgh's tackles from my head because they were just so bad last year. Outside of that game, I felt like it was a little bit, you mentioned Jared Verse. It was kind of skewed in that direction where it's a lot of just straight down the middle power rushes and doesn't cleanly win the outside track as often as I would want to see. But what I was really impressed with TJ Parker is his natural heavy hands to transition to counters, like when his bull rush only gets him 60% of the way there. He's able to fluidly transition into a club move, finish off that rep. Do you think that TJ Parker, like where kind of on the spectrum would you say he is as far as power versus speed? Do you think he's purely a one-dimensional guy, or do you think he can be a little bit more versatile?
I don't think he'll win around the corner, around the edge of tackles often in the NFL because you don't really see him do it even in the college game right now. I think he's going to rely on that power mostly in the league. I think if he gets more inside counters into his game, maybe break out a spin move here and there, that could help out his game too. But I think he's going to be a guy that relies on that, like I said, the power before. I mean, there was one rep he had, I think it was against Virginia Tech, where the tackle had a vice grip like on his shoulder pad right here. Mm-hmm. And Parker literally took his hand and like removed it from his shoulder pad, hit the tackle in the face of his own hand, and then sidestepped the tackle, tackled Kyron Drones, forced a fumble. Clemson got the ball back. Like, that's just the kind of raw upper body strength you see from TJ Parker. And like I said, he gets off the ball pretty quickly too. It's not like he's very slow getting off the ball either. So he's a guy that I think will win more with power in the NFL than anything else. Like I said, I don't think he's got the bend or the speed to win around the corner like other edge defenders in the NFL.